Is hell something that waits for us passively, or is it something that we actively create? Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for another poetry discussion, which will appear in the poetry discussion playlist here on the channel. Today's poem in question, Porphyria's Lover by Robert Browning, and it reads as such. The rain set early into night, the sullen wind was too soon awake. It tore the elm tops down for spite, and did its worst to vex the lake. I listened with heart fit to break, when glided in Porphyria straight. She shut the cold out and the storm, and kneeled and made the cheerless grate blaze up, and all the cottage warm. Which done, she rose, and from her form withdrew the dripping cloak and shawl, and laid her soiled gloves by, untied her hat, and let the damp hair fall. And last she sat last she sat by my side and called me. When no voice replied, she put my arm about her waist, and made her smooth white shoulder bare, and all her yellow hair displaced, and stooping, made my cheek lie there, and spread o'er all her yellow hair, murmuring how she loved me, she, too weak for all her heart's endeavor, to set its struggling passion free, from pride and vainer ties dissever, and give herself to me forever. But passion sometimes would prevail, nor could tonight's gay feast restrain a sudden thought of one so pale, for love of her, and all in vain. So she was come through wind and rain. Be sure I looked up at her eyes, happy and proud, the last I knew. Porphyria worshipped me. Surprise made my heart swell, and still it grew while I debated what to do. That moment she was mine, fair, perfectly pure and good. I found a thing to do, and all her hair in one long yellow string I wound 3 times her little throat around, and strangled her. No pain she felt. I am quite sure she felt no pain. As a shut bud that holds a bee, I warily oped her lids again. Laughed the blue eyes without a stain, and I untightened next the trees. About her neck, her cheek once more blushed bright beneath my burning kiss. I propped her head up as before, only this time my shoulder bore her head, which droops upon it still. The smiling rosy little head, so glad it has its utmost will, that all it scorned at once is fled, and I, its love, am gained instead. Porphyria's love she guessed not how her darling one wish would be heard, and thus we sit together now, and all night long we have not stirred, and yet God has not said a word. So what we have here is a man who is madly in love with a woman, and she comes to him, and in a night where they are sort of existing as lovers, he decides to murder her. Now, we may have a little bit of foreshadowing here. The rain set in early tonight. The sullen wind was soon awake. It tore the elm tops down for spite, and did its worst to vex the lake. It is interesting to me because I'm a big William Faulkner fan, but it's only recently that I ever read A Rose for Emily. A Rose for Emily is the same type of story, but from the not from the woman's point of view, but the woman is the killer in the story. And in that story too, she keeps her lover in bed with her. Here we have the speaker keeping Porphyria in bed with him. So the big question from this might seem to be, so I think oftentimes when a story like this is presented, a poem like this is presented, where someone kills their lover in order to keep them, we write it off as a madman, a madwoman. Is that the case? This is a real story. I mean, not this one, but this type of thing happens a lot. Is it madness or is it something delusional? Right? Madness, I think, is something that is more random than this. This seems to be something that is a misunderstanding of the human experience that people go through. And certainly they are to blame for it. But it's more common, I think, than just straight madness. How often, even when it's not to this extent, people who have violent, toxic relationships, and you try to get them away from that other person and they will not go. And you know in the back of your mind, probably this ends very ugly. But at some point, you have to throw your hands up and say, okay, this is your life, not mine. So I don't think that's the main question here. I don't think that madness is really all that compelling a talking point from this poem, from this story, from what we have here. I think if you are a writer, one of the interesting things to talk about is this. Just the straight up saying, in one long yellow string I wound 3 times around her little throat and strangled her. That's a bold choice. That's a bold choice. Edgar Allan Poe, often when he's writing about murder, you almost have to read it 2 or 3 times to understand what exactly happened. Not here. This is just strangulation. Straight up, flat out, pillar to post. But this is interesting to me. And all night long we had not stirred, and yet God has not said a word. Were this individual just mad, crazy? I don't think this line happens. I don't think this couplet happens. I don't think a madman thinks he has done anything wrong. Our speaker here sure seems to know what I did was not a good thing. What I did was something I should not have done, and I will be judged. For example, the crazy speakers in Edgar Allan Poe, they're constantly hedging their bet. They're constantly giving you different stories as to what happened. Our speaker here says, I strangled her. And now I'm sitting here with her. God hasn't judged me yet. The speaker boasts. I mean, that's an exclamation point at the end. And yet God has not said a word. He boasts that God has not yet punished him. But here's a question. What use has God to punish a man who readily punishes himself? There's an old Eminem lyric. I believe it's from his second album. It is from his second album. I don't remember the song. I murder a rhyme, one word at a time. You've never heard of a mind as perverted as mine. Get rid of that 9, it ain't gonna help. What good's it gonna do against a man who strangles himself? Basically saying, yeah, I'm off the rocker. I have created a world of pain for myself. So you've pulled out your gun to threaten me. It's not going to do any good. I strangle myself. I think that this poem is very much in that same vein. I think that what we are supposed to take from this poem is not, oh, the speaker is so crazy. No. I think that what Robert Browning is giving us here is the idea that this speaker has created hell for himself. What's God going to do? The speaker had one thing, Porphyria. The speaker had one thing that he loved, and he readily destroyed it for himself. What good is God going to, what use does God have to send this individual to hell? The rest of your life, you will have nothing. The rest of your life, you have to understand and know and live with the fact that you ended the one thing that meant anything to you. Why punish that individual? That individual is punishing himself. Let him waller in it. That is all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more literature in the future. There's poetry every Monday, and I hope to have you back for the next one.